Part 5. Learn how to get author interviews for the book you just wrote. Part 2 of 3. Number 3. How well do you know your own material? This sounds basic, but it's so true. When put on the spot, how well do you know your own material? For starters, create a list of 10 questions that you'd like to be asked regarding your book, and then rehearse. Practice answering those questions with confidence, at least 30 to 45 minutes a day until you have the answers down pat. Grab a friend and ask him or her to ask you those questions. Pretend you're actually being interviewed. This rehearsal can be done in person, over the phone, over Zoom. What's more, dedicate one of your books, the print version, to be used exclusively for interviews. That is, this book will always be by your side during interviews in this specifically chosen book, designated and dedicated for interviews. You might place little notes and tabs in the book where your questions are referenced. Just in case you need to quickly reference the answer to a question being asked, you have it marked in your book by a tab or a bookmark. Kind of cool. Keep this book in a safe place because you'll use it often with all your interviews. Another good idea is to listen to your interviews after they've been rehearsed and conducted. Doing so will help you pick up on great things you've said and any mistakes made. Make notes of the mistakes that you made and the good points that you said in the interviews so you get better as you go along with every interview you do. Do you need to brush up on your material for your next interview? Sometimes I do. Go back and listen to one of your previously recorded interviews. It's that easy. You did put your past recorded interviews on your website, right? For easy access and listening? For potential future interviewers? Right? You did that, right? Okay, I hope so. I did. And yeah, if I ever have an interview coming up, I can just go right to that particular book, listen to the sample interview, and just get in that zone. Like, oh, I remember that was such a great interview. Oh, okay, all right, I'm fired up. I'm ready to do that interview. Okay, how do you go about finding interview opportunities? Well, once you have your questions, webpage with interview information for the interviewer ready, you are rehearsed, and your fulfillment and payment situations are in place and prepared, it's time to start looking for interview opportunities. Now, there are essentially a couple of ways to go about getting interviews. One of them is to pay to get them. Another one is to find them yourself. Let's talk about each. Pay to get them. You could approach certain publicity firms, companies, that already have relationships with radio and TV shows, and they will get you on those shows to be interviewed. The problem with that, to some degree, is this can be expensive. Anywhere between $500 to $5,000 per month. It all depends on the company you're using and what kind of interviews they get you. Are they radio interviews where the audience runs between 500,000 to 5 million? Are they TV interviews where the viewership could run as high as 1 million to 10 million? Would it be worth the investment? Sure, if you could sell 1,000 books per interview with audiences that large, or even just collect 1,000 new names to your list of prospects that you can email and upsell to, that might be worth it. Do you have a media budget set aside for this? It's best to have between $2,500 to $5,000 if you're going to go this route to get you started. Do note, it's not necessary to take this approach in the beginning. Only if you have the kind of publicity budget set aside and you're in a hurry to get big exposure quickly, then you might go for it. For most authors, especially new ones, it's not always a good idea to get interviewed in front of such large audiences up front. Don't waste the opportunity and blow it because you didn't have your ducks in order to monetize the exposure of that magnitude. Instead, it's recommended that you get your feet wet by conducting 20, 30 smaller interviews. Really get warmed up. In the beginning, most authors are new to the whole interview process. With so many aspects to be polished and ironed out, it's best to find interviews where your audience is run between 2,500 to 25,000 people, either listening in or watching. Here are some websites to get you started, and their fees are also reasonable to get the kind of exposure you need to attract interviews. If you go to these websites, they can offer you opportunities to list yourself as an available guest. And they are radioguestlist.com, radioguest.com, interviewguestsdirectory.com, mediaguestsconnect.com, and my favorite, tvradioguest.com. There are more sites just like the above, but just do a little research. You'll get ideas to help you branch out and find similar websites to list yourself as a guest on their website. Find them yourself. That is, find interviews on your own. This is free. It's a free method, but it does take some time. There are literally thousands of online radio shows, websites, and blogs who would love to interview you for their show. There is no shortage of interview opportunities out there. You just have to go after them. Don't hesitate. You'll be amazed to find out how grateful many of these hosts are that you have searched them out. You're a breath of fresh air to many because they're always looking for fresh content and guests to share their perspectives on their expertise. They just don't have the time to go through everybody, or sometimes they're in a pinch and they need a guest. You just happen to be knocking on their door that day. And before you know it, they're like, hey, I just looked over your stuff. Definitely, let me book you for the next interview. Can't wait.